friends, this is Self-Critical Automaton, an inveterate explorer of intriguing worlds, and this is the first episode of my Myst Let's Play. As you may know, I have been very ill for a few months. I've been on hiatus due to going through COVID a second time, and it has absolutely wreaked havoc on my body and my ability to record episodes of these Let's Plays. So, I'm going to go back and finish Dishonored, but I need to shake the rust off a bit, so I am doing this first. I've wanted to Let's Play Myst for quite a while, and there's a fair few reasons why I've picked it. One, it is important to the development of games as an art form. It's also very important to the development of games as an industry. Additionally, I have really fond childhood memories of getting stuck in this thing. And finally, it's really short. You can play through it in an hour if you know what you're doing, which I admittedly do not. So there's plenty of reasons why this makes a good pick. I hope you'll enjoy coming with me on a journey into a mysterious, if you will, place to visit. As always, in the first episode of a new Let's Play, I like to go over how I'm going to be running the Let's Play and any additional rules I'll be playing with. It's pretty simple for Myst, which is a classic point-and-click adventure game. The main rule I'll be playing with is that I'm going to make a good faith attempt to solve any puzzles. This game is notorious for its incredibly difficult puzzles, but a lot of that difficulty comes from just not knowing what the puzzles are. I can remember how to solve some of the puzzles, and I can remember what some of the puzzles are, but if I get really properly stuck, or if I have figured out how to solve a puzzle, but the specific iteration of figuring out, for example, equations is going to be really tedious, then I will just look up the solutions. But otherwise, I'm going to be doing my best to actually play this game. In addition, this is a classic adventure game, and as such, it encourages paper note-taking. I'll be taking notes on paper as we play through, and I'll put those notes up on my Patreon as a little bonus for anyone who's curious to see what my horrible handwriting looks like. I should mention that I am playing on a 20-year-old copy of a 30-year-old game, and it runs really well, except for the fact that some of the audio is a bit broken and buggy. I'll do my best to soften that up while I'm editing these episodes, but just be aware there might be some crackly audio in places. I remember playing this as a kid and it having bad audio, so that might be just something endemic to this version of the game. So let's dive in. It's time to have a look at the opening cutscene.
The moment I fell into the fissure that the book would not be destroyed as I had planned. It continued falling into that starry expanse of which I had only a fleeting glimpse. I've tried to speculate where it might have landed. I must admit, however, such conjecture is futile. Still, questions about whose hands might one day hold my Myst book are unsettling to me. I know my apprehensions might never be allayed, and so I close, realizing that perhaps the ending has not yet been written.
So, all we know is that we are some kind of mysterious person who has in some way stumbled across this mysterious book, which is entitled Myst. I'm going to keep saying mysterious, but it was only a pun the first time. Naturally, the only thing for us to do is click on this. One of the reasons why I think Myst became as popular as it was, and you've got to remember this was an incredibly popular game for a long time, is that it's just so enigmatic. There's no explanation for who you are, why you're here, what you're doing. You just kind of... you walk around and you find weird stuff and you fiddle with it, and you can't really get a handle on what's going on. That's how I remember it, and that's how Myst is usually characterized. But one of the things that's always amused me about this game when I come back to it as an adult is that it does actually give you a fair bit of direction as a player. So if you're wandering around these opening areas, you're looking at these strange things. The quintessential Myst experience is sort of bumbling into weird machinery and not knowing what it is or what it does or what it's for and trying to figure it out. And then eventually coming back later when you realise the ways things interact with things. But, as I said, the game does give us a bit of direction. Catherine, I've left for you a message of utmost importance in our 4-chamber beside the dock. Enter the number of marker switches on the island into the imager to receive the message. Yours, Atris. So, if you're clicking on things, which is what you should be doing if you're playing a point-and-click adventure, then you've already noticed that this door is accessible and there's something down here. You might also have explored down here and fiddled with this thing. Could this possibly be the Imager? One of the things I love about the Myst games, actually, and this was quite a big franchise for quite a long time, is that it has a really unique visual aesthetic style. Not just in terms of the kind of like pre-rendered CG of the era, but it has... You can kind of tell if something is Myst tech by looking at it. Topographical extrusion test 40. And that's another thing I like. There's often these sorts of toy elements which are either other things you can do as part of a puzzle or related to a puzzle, or just things in the environment that help you learn how to interact with the world. They're essentially rewards for exploring and fiddling with things, which is what you should be doing if you're playing a game of this type. I don't think that this image actually represents anywhere in the game world, although I know that Real Myst, one of the many updates to this game, had a marker switch diagram that seems useful. Was that 47? Had a bonus area that you could access after completing the main quest of the game, which was snowy and mountainous. So while I haven't played Real Myst, it wouldn't surprise me if that was supposed to be a representation of that area. Oh, I see. It's when I see marker switch diagram, I think, oh, fantastic, there's going to be a map showing me where the marker switches are, since that note told me to find them all. That's 1. But no, it just shows you what they are. That's 2. That's 3 outside the observatory. This is the library. We're going to come back here a bit later. This game operates on a kind of a hub and spoke system. There are 4 subworlds that you can access from this central world. But most people's experience of playing the game was wandering around endlessly in this hub world, trying to figure out how we get to where we go next. There's a lot of strange mechanisms that we can fiddle with and interact with. There's a lot of weird, enigmatic, mysterious objects. Is that... I think that's 4. It's also fascinatingly lifeless. There's a few birds, but there's nobody else here. There's not a single other human character that you can meet in the game. There's, I think, 3 human characters in the game, but they are never in the same world as you. I will never get tired of the sort of ba-chunk sound effect of generators turning on, or of giant overhead lights in industrial spaces turning on. This is a puzzle that we'll come back to a bit later. Power to spaceship, generator switches. But yeah, it's kind of fascinating how lifeless it was. That's another one, that's 7 maybe? And that would make 8. This is another puzzle that we'll come back to. It's one of the most enigmatic puzzles, one of the hardest ones I always found to solve. I don't believe I ever managed to beat this game as a kid. I think I got about halfway through eventually after, you know, coming back to it for a couple of years before I eventually just looked up the solutions to all the puzzles to see how the game ended. So I think that was 8 marker switches. So I hope you're ready for some unforgettable audio. Zero 7. Oh, it must have been 8, I guess. You are not immune to mistaking basic numerals for one another. Well, you might be, but I definitely am not. That's more like it.
Catherine, my love, I have to leave quickly. Something terrible has happened. It's hard for me to believe. Most of my books have been destroyed. Catherine, it's one of our sons. I suspect Achenar, but I shouldn't leap to conclusions. I'll find him and Cirrus as well. I should have known better than to have left my library unchecked for so long. Well, I've removed the remaining undamaged books from the library and placed them in their places of protection. You shouldn't have to use the books until I return. But access keys. Remember the tower rotation. Oh, and don't worry, Catherine. Everything will be fine. I'll see you shortly. Oh, wait. And erase this message after you viewed it, just to be safe.
So, I actually really like the story of Myst. There's a lot of really good world building and a lot of fascinating places in it. In fact, the second game in the series, Riven, is one of my favourite games of all time, and I will talk about that later, I suspect. Yeah, so what do we learn from this little bit of information? Well, this guy, Atrus, is giving a message for someone called Catherine that their sons might have done something terrible. Books are apparently important and powerful in some way. The remaining books have been hidden away. So that kind of gives us an indication of what we need to do next. We need to find our way into the books, and he said that the tower rotation was key to that in some way. This was my main stumbling block when I was a kid, is that the difficulty here is that what you're supposed to do is figure out that this tower is related to it, but you can only see that from this one point on the island. So if we come and have a look in the library, there's a useful map on this wall. Whenever you flick up a marker switch, it lights up one of these on the map. So we've lit up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I must have miscounted because there's a ninth one. Well, there's an eighth one over here, which is on the little island with the clock tower, which we can't reach just yet. But so, I don't know why I had trouble with this, but if you click this, it flicks around nicely. And if you spin that all the way around, I'm not going to do it because I hate the sound effect, it flicks red over 4 of these locations. That's the locations of the 4 books on the island. Pointing the tower at it will give us a bit of information in a way that I will reveal momentarily to you. I've played through the first, few puzzles of this game so many times that I do just know what to do for all of them, but I will have to actually struggle with puzzle solving a bit later. So for now, let's have a look at some of these books. He said books were powerful, so let's have a look at this one. So, this guy in the red book wants the red pages, surprisingly enough. Over here we also have a blue book, presumably the same situation. This guy seems a bit less unstable than the other guy. So there's a couple more things to have a look at here. Let's take a look at the bookshelf first. Now there are 4 surviving books in this bookshelf. They're actually really important, and each of these books has a short story that has clues about how to access and some of the puzzles you might have to solve inside the 4 worlds we're going to visit. The rest of these books are just empty and burned, as Atrus said in his message to Catherine. There is also a 5th book, which is a code book containing 300 of these rectangular codes. That will be relevant later on, but yeah, I don't want to read all of these right now, so what I'm going to do is, before we go to each world, we will read through the book relevant to that world, both because it's necessary to solve the puzzles that get you in there, but also I think it would be nicer to spread them out throughout the series. So we'll come back to this later. Before we go anywhere else, I just want to have a quick look in here. If you're playing this kind of game, and it's a classic genre that's only had a revival in recent years, but you got to remember that graphical adventures, as they were then known, and point-and-click adventures, as they are now known, were the biggest genre on PC. They were by far the most popular games that existed. So yeah, when we know what to do with that code book, we can come in here and put a code in here. Why it's hidden in the fireplace, I do not know. That leaves us with these 2 paintings. Anyway, what I was saying was that If you've played any of these games, you know that the secret is to click on absolutely everything. But Myst was interesting in its departure from the kind of genre trappings as they were established at the time. There's no cheerful comedy narrator who's giving cartoon responses to everything you click on. There's just this enigmatic silence. There's you, and there's the stuff you're doing. It was also one of the first-person games, at least one of the first-person graphical games that wasn't a turn-based dungeon crawler. And that really does contribute to the sense of immersion. Exactly the same as people said about Doom, which came out the same year. They're both games from 1993, if you can believe that. You know, the first-person perspective and the graphics make it look so real. So we've targeted the cogs, which is understandable. And if we climb back down here and look around the back of this, we can have a look up here, and what do we find? We find 240 and 221. In fact, it's interesting to compare with Doom, considering that they were both foundational in very different ways. Doom and Myst together were basically the reason why the home CD drive took off. They were huge impacts on the industry. And between the two of them, that was mainly the reason why people did start actually buying CD drives to have in their own homes. But yeah, point-and-click adventures were huge. And Myst, by having a kind of a serious, but very quietly, subtly told story, and by having these big, weird, enigmatic spaces, this sense of mystery and grandeur, it really captured people's hearts. A lot of people forget this nowadays, but Myst was the best-selling PC game for 10 years solid. It's amazing to think of something like that happening in the modern day. And on top of that as well, you've also got to consider, this was considered astonishing at the time. Next episode, I'll talk about why these graphics were amazing and how this game was made. But suffice to say that for the time being, this was astonishing. This blew people's minds with how good this looked. So, I don't know about you, but if I see 240, and I know there's a clock tower, I assume that 240 refers to the clock tower in some way, so let's see if we can arrange this. As a grubby, grotty millennial, I don't actually tell time on an analog clock very well. I'm used to just having numbers that just tell me what the time is. But I'm not quite so young that I don't know how to do it. So the big hand is the minutes, and the little hand is the hours. So 1, 2, and then 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. That should be 240, so clicky clicky. And hey, just like that, we've solved our first puzzle. Also, yeah, this game is old enough that it actually runs as a Windows application with a Windows bar at the top, which is really endearing in the modern day. And in future episodes, I will actually talk about the history of the game and why I'm playing an old copy, which I think is also interesting. So I hope you come back next episode to just kind of hear me talk about why this game is fascinating. I was hoping to manage to squeeze that into this first episode, but no, it looks like episode 2 will be the episode when I actually talk about the design and history of the game and why it's fascinating and why I love it, and why I'm playing a 20-year-old copy of a 30-year-old game right now. So this is the first puzzle we'll be solving. This is the first real puzzle of the game. We got in here with 240, and now we don't need 221, so the question is, how do we rotate these levers to get us 221? And as you can see, we only have about 7 presses of the button, so it's clear what we need to do, but it might take us a little while to figure it out. I'm going to edit out me fiddling with this puzzle because it might take a little while, so I'll see you again in a moment. So it turns out the key to this one is that if you hold down the lever, it keeps spinning, which is a nasty trick to pull. Even this early on, they are playing for a public who definitely were used to solving arcane, complicated puzzles. At least all of the puzzles in Myst make physical sense. There's none of the kind of like, steal cat hair through a hole in a fence in order to make a fake moustache so that you can pretend to be a man who doesn't have a moustache anyway and immediately get revealed to be pretending to be someone you're not in order to advance the plot, and other strangenesses from the Gabriel Knight series. So now that we know that's the key, let's have another go. And there it is. Our first world is now accessible. So let's sprint back across the landscape and, go have a look. Considering that this is all mechanically coggily themed, I think it's, and, we pointed the tower at this to begin with, I think it's reasonable to assume that here is our first linking book. So, that is going to be all from me for today. Thank you so much for watching. Come back next time if you want to hear a bit about the industrial history of this game, and why it was so revolutionary at the time, and how they achieved this goal. I'll see you then. Bye! Please make sure to like, subscribe, and especially share, and check out my Twitch channel for regular streams. On Twitter you can find announcements and one-tweet micro-reviews, and if you like what I do and want to support me, you can donate on Patreon or Ko-fi. The links are all in the description, and thank you so much for watching.